I'm back and I've got a lot to say. I don't know what the hell I just went through. My mind is a clusterfuck of disorganized thoughts right now, but I need to type them out as soon as I can while my memory is still fresh. I'm sorry if I come across as incoherent in this. I'll try to be as clear as possible. When I booted up the game and entered the world, my character spawned in front of a school, right where I left off. Up to that point, I had been blindly traveling, but this time was different. This was no longer just a nostalgia trip. I fully intended to search for more information about the true nature of the game. The only lead I had was the house I stumbled into from entry 1 of my blog. It had been the only occupied home in the town, and that couldn't have been a coincidence. As I made my way back towards town, I heard the familiar sound of footsteps trailing behind me. How typical. No matter where I went, he followed. Their vision fell upon my character as I entered the house. None of the character models had moved since I last visited the place. They all stood still like statues, only their eyes shifted while I traversed each room. If I'm honest, I paid them very little attention. My mind defaulted to blurring out their presence. I wasn't exactly sure what I was looking for. I hoped the house contained a clue for me. I needed a sense of direction as I progressed through the game. Using the keypad to highlight every object in sight, I attempted to interact with everything I could. I clicked on every bookshelf, every desk, every drawer. Nothing I found was of use to me. I felt utterly defeated and pessimistically suspected that searching the house was a fruitless endeavor. As I approached the door to leave, I had an idea. I turned and approached the model of Mr. O that had been following me. When I interacted with him, a text box popped up above his head. "Since we're here, do you want to go downstairs, Jeremy?" This confused me. I had searched the entire house at that point, and I knew there was no basement. I selected the yes option, and Mr. O spun around and promptly walked forward. My character automatically followed him. We'd had entered a cinematic cutscene within the game. I followed Mr. O into his bedroom, and he approached his bed. I watched as he slid the bed to the side, revealing a hole in the floor, where a ladder stood. Mr. O stepped onto the ladder and descended. I knew for a fact that I had tried interacting with that bed before. Nothing happened when I attempted to shift it. As my character climbed down the rungs of the ladder, I remembered my previous play session. When I had been trapped inside of the locked room, I was only able to exit approaching Mr. O. I had found myself in a similar situation. There were certain locations in the game that were impossible to access or exit without the help of Mr. O. The first time I encountered that situation, I dismissed it as unimportant. As it happened a second time, I began to suspect that it was an intentional game mechanic. When I finally found myself at the bottom of the ladder, I was alone in a large room. A header dropped down from the top of the screen, and it read, Mr. O's basement. Something about the place struck me as familiar, but I couldn't place that at first. I simply felt a sense of deja vu wash over me. It was a feeling which grew in intensity the longer I stayed inside of Mr. O's basement. Mr. O was waiting for me at the opposite end of the room. As I walked towards him, my character entered another cutscene. He stood against the wall, with Mr. O standing directly in front of him. Mr. O withdrew a camera from his inventory and began snapping photos of my character. After a few moments, Mr. O set his camera down and approached me. "You did such a great job, Jeremy. I'm so proud of you." He turned towards the camera, facing me directly. He tilted his head and grinned. He was trying to directly communicate his glee, not to my character, but to me, the player. This continued for a couple of seconds before he faced my character once more. He proceeded to hand them something before leaving the area. As I opened my inventory, I realized he had given me a cookie, as well as 25 gold coins. By that point, I was already weirded out by what had taken place. Why the fuck had Mr. O taken photos of me? Why did he reward me as well? I hardly had time to think about that, however, because that's when I noticed it. I had taken it in the environment and realized that my character was surrounded by blank white walls, which were similar in appearance to the ones I found in my DS camera roll. What the fuck? I felt sick to my stomach as a sense of pure dread set within me. I didn't want to continue. It all felt so incredibly wrong. I forced myself to carry onward, knowing in the back of my mind that stopping would do me no good. I wanted the satisfaction of knowing what was going on regardless of what that knowledge entailed. I made my way across the room and towards the ladder. I ascended it and stepped out of the basement. Mr. O stood next to the hole in the floor, waiting for me. He quickly stepped towards me, and a dialogue bubble popped up above his head once again. "Jeremy, I need you to listen to me," he began. He turned to face me directly once again. "When you love someone, Jeremy, you do anything for them, right? You take care of them, you make them happy. Jeremy, remember, there's nothing wrong with making someone you love happy." I just stared at the screen. Mr. O returned my gaze. His smile had vanished at that point. His typical jovial expression had been replaced with a stern look. "And it's okay to keep secrets to protect the ones you love, isn't it, Jeremy? You can keep everything between us, right?" I was given the option to respond to him. A text bubble appeared next to my character. An arrow pointed to the yes option. There was no other choice presented to me. I was not allowed to dissent, only to agree. I tried to move away from Mr. O, only to find that I couldn't. I was stuck. There was only one way forward, and it made my skin crawl. He wasn't asking me a question, he was giving me a command. I selected the yes option. Doing so caused Mr. O's smile to return, and I was finally able to move freely again. I didn't stick around. I forced my character to leave the house as quickly as possible. I snapped the DS shut and sat it down beside me. When Mr. O told me not to tell anyone but about him, it invoked something deep within my gut. It was the exact same feeling that overcame me whenever I thought of telling my mother about Mr. Zo's presence in the game. The exact same fucking feeling. I know what I said earlier about not jumping to hasty conclusions. I know I said that, and I know maybe I'm contradicting myself here, but I don't care. I need to type my intuitive reaction to all this here, if only to reflect on it later. Although the overall vibe of the game had felt off to me since I began playing it, I couldn't have foreseen this. As I've replayed the game, the only purpose it serves so far is to remind me of him. The only characters in this game are him and I. It's as if the game is trying to tell me that I'm alone in this world, alone aside from being with him. Whenever I go anywhere, he follows. Whenever I go anywhere, he watches. He always watches. The game wants me to know that. It wants me to accept it. Hell, it's working, isn't it? As I go on, I pay less attention to his model following me. As I play, I take it for granted that he's staring at me constantly. It wants me to think that this is normal. Fuck, man. There's even an entire room in my character's house where he lives. He wants to get close to me. Whenever I need something, whenever I'm stuck and can't progress, I'm meant to go to him. I'm meant to be dependent on him, to view him as a solution to my problems. I know this all sounds insane, but it's honestly how I feel. It's as if the game is training me, for lack of a better term. It's controlling how I think. It's controlling how I feel. It's controlling how I behave. It's making me act the way he wants me to act. I don't fucking know. I'm kind of spitballing right here, but is it really that much of a stretch? I don't feel like I'm speaking gibberish here. Please tell me I'm making sense. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's a perfectly innocent, reasonable explanation for all of this. If that's the case, it sure isn't fucking appearing that way. Or maybe I just need sleep. I've been up for far too long. Perhaps I don't want to rest because I'm afraid I'll face his torment in my dreams again. I'm sorry I've subjected you all to my ramblings. All I wanted was to take a break from my stressful life and travel back to simpler times. I never expected I would unleash this all upon myself. I'm not sure if I'll touch the game again. While I'd hate to have unanswered questions about the game and Mr. O, I'm not sure if continuing it is worth it. The thing is really starting to fuck with my head. I understand my previous remarks about wanting to know more about the game, no matter what that entailed. I'm not sure how much conviction I hold regarding that attitude anymore. I hadn't planned on continuing this vlog. Believe me, I will not be picking up that DS again. It's been thrown back into that cardboard box where it belongs, and where it will stay. Still, I was browsing through my email the other night and received a notification in my inbox. Someone had finally replied to my forum post. I hesitated to open the email. Even if somebody had reached out to me with information about the game, I wasn't sure that I wanted it. In the end, I did open that email, and I returned to my forum post. I convinced myself that so long as I didn't have to play that game again, I would be okay. Opening the page, my eyes scanned the single response to my question. Hey, I know about this game, and I know who created it. Email me so we can talk. Below his reply was an email address. I won't include it here for the sake of preserving the responder's privacy. As I plugged in the address into the email search bar, I paused. I sat motionlessly and gawked at the name associated with the account I was about to reach out to. Sammy. I wasn't sure what exactly to make of it. It couldn't have been a coincidence that the one person who reached out to me about Township Village just so happened to have a name reminiscent of my childhood friend, right? Someone had to have been fucking with me at that point. I assumed that someone had stumbled upon my blog, searched for my forum post, and tried trolling me upon finding it. I hastily typed out an email and sent it his way. Who the fuck is this? He replied within minutes. Who are you? It read. I grew flustered as I realized I hadn't introduced myself. I'm the guy who posted the forum thread you replied to. Who the fuck are you? After I sent that, my Google Hangouts tab popped up. It contained a message from the address I had been emailing. S. Are you Jeremy from blank elementary? I was taken aback. I knew for a fact that I had never shared my school name on this blog. J. Who are you? And how do you know what school I went to? S. Jesus dude, relax, it's Sam. Do you remember me from school? Are you fucking serious? Deadly serious. You're Sam. Yep. Long time no see, buddy. And you know about the game? Do you really not? Do I really not what? Do you really not know about the game? I swear to God, I've forgotten where I got it from and who made it. Please tell me you can fill me in on this shit. Yeah, I can, but there's a lot to explain. Is it possible we can meet somewhere? Maybe. Do you live near me? I'm located at... omitted for privacy reasons. That's not far from where you used to live as kids. Guess you haven't traveled too far away, huh? Do you live nearby or not? I can drive there if you give me a few hours. Do you want to meet over coffee? A few hours? You can't just tell me here? I told you, it's a lot. Please? Fine, we'll meet up. One more thing. Yeah? I've been searching for information on this game for a while. Whenever I Google it, nothing shows up. If you knew about it and you've been interested in it enough to find my forum post, why hadn't you made a post about it yourself? Because I couldn't bring myself to reach out. I just kept on putting it off for years. But man, some things you just can't forget. Every now and then I would check online to see if others had posted about it. Well, not others. You specifically. I promise it'll make more sense when we meet. Trust me. I'm not sure what it is he can't just tell me over the computer. I don't know what to expect. He seemed pretty urgent to meet me. I can't say I blame him. I feel just as eager to talk with him. If what he's saying is true, he could potentially be the key to answering my questions. We're seeing each other at a local Starbucks later today. I'll be back soon. When he stepped out of the car, the first thing I saw was his bright blonde hair. He had a baby face. It still very much resembles the image of him in the black digital camera. He ran up to me and gave me a hug. I returned his embrace. There's a saying that although we can't always remember what people say to us, we'll always remember how they made us feel. Even if I couldn't remember our childhood friendship, I very much felt the sense of joy caused by reconnecting with someone I used to be close with. We entered the Starbucks. He asked me if I wanted a drink and even offered to cover the cost. I declined, insisting that we chat. He obliged my request, and we chose a booth to sit down in. He smiled, but I found it difficult to reciprocate his joyful appearance. I was unresponsive to his attempts at small talk. It wasn't that I didn't wish to make up for lost time, it's just that there was more pressing matters to be discussed. Taking the hint, he assumed a straight face and cut the bullshit. He apologized, admitting that he was unsure of how to broach the elephant in the room. I asked him to start from the beginning and tell me how he knew about the game, and how he knew about who made it. He looked up at me with great remorse and softly muttered that he knew these things because he knew the creator of the game on a personal level. What he said next, I'm not sure I'm currently able to provide. I'm sorry, I just can't. I just can't do it. I've been debating even uploading this next section to the vlog. I figured that if I was going to do it, I'd need to be as coherent as possible. Typing this part out the other day would not be conducive to meeting that end, so I took a break to calm my nerves. I'm still shaken up, but if I don't type this out now, then when? Sam told me that Mr. O was his father. All of my prior theories had been wrong. He was no ghost, and he wasn't my imaginary friend, as is often the case. The truth is far simpler than we take it on to be. He was a real fucking person. He was someone I knew, and he was someone who knew me. Sam said that when we were kids, I would frequently come to his house for our little playdates. Sometimes I would even spend the night for a sleepover. He told me that his father always took a special interest in me. Oftentimes, he would be the one to ask Sam whether he wanted me to come over for a visit. Sam's father had a history in software development and engineering. When he saw how much I loved my Nintendo DS, he wanted to connect with me through that medium. He'd been pondering over how he would accomplish this for weeks on end. Sam told me that at times it's all his father would think about. My memory is a little fuzzy here, Sam began, but I think one night after you left my house, you accidentally left your DS behind. When he found out about that, he went out to the store, told me he was going out to get a game. He came back with a copy of Animal Crossing game cartridge, and he went down to the basement with both the game and your DS. And what did he do with them? I asked. He told me he was going to make a bona fide version of the game, one that he'd use to build a world for you specifically, where you could spend time with him even if you weren't visiting us. He often rambled about how much you would love it, even went on and on about a special room he would make for the game, that you could enter if you did a good job, as he put it. My thoughts shifted to the locked door in the school. I vividly remembered the sign next to it, labeled Mr. O. I refused to even imagine what awaited me in that room. I didn't remember any of this, no matter how hard I tried. Everything Sam told me felt like a brand new information. At that moment, I wanted to meet Sam's father. I wanted to ask him why the fuck he would ever make such a sick game for a kid like me. I looked Sam dead in his eyes and asked, Sam, where's your father? How can I reach him? You can't contact him, he told me. His voice began to tremble. He was starting to choke up. He's in prison. He's been in prison for years now. Only family is allowed to see him, and I never want to see that piece of shit again. I didn't respond. Thousands of thoughts raced through my head, but I didn't speak a single one of them into existence. Instead, I allowed Sam to proceed with what he had to say. When my mother found out, she couldn't take it. She just couldn't fucking take it, man. She's gone because of him. It's his fault. I'm so sorry, man. I'm so sorry for what he did. I noticed his body visibly shaking. I placed my hand on his shoulder and rubbed it gently, attempting to calm him down. It's alright, Sam. Just take a deep breath. What did he do? Sam looked up at me. He wiped his eyes with his arms and sighed. He molested children. They locked him up for molesting goddamn children. My heart sank beneath my chest. I leaned back in my seat, looking towards the ceiling. There was no way for me to process what I had heard. That fucking monster made that game for me. A game that he filled with replicas of himself, for the express purpose of surrounding my character with. He made it to condition me to grow closer to him, and as I learned who he was, I felt as if I were going to be sick. Even though I had forgotten much of the content of the game before revisiting it, it still had control over at least some of my behavior. My unwillingness to even mention what the game contained to my mom immediately came to mind. It was all the truth, a truth I had constantly been trying to deny, but the truth nonetheless. I recalled the images I found in my DS camera roll. Sam had told me earlier that I spent a lot of time at his home. I had been alone with Sam's father before. In fact, it was likely that we had been alone together multiple times. Not only had I been in the presence of a monster during my childhood, I couldn't remember any of it. I don't know what the fuck happened between us. I don't know what happened to me. Maybe it's for the best that I don't remember. Perhaps if I could recollect the events that happened years ago, I would succumb to a depression far deeper than the one I'm currently finding myself in. The photos of myself that I found in that black digital camera, several of them portrayed me as having a deeply disturbed, anxious look about me. Even as a child, I must have known that something was wrong. I've come to reason that I had suppressed my memory of Sam's father, not wanting to deal with whatever it was I had experienced. Despite these recent revelations having left me horrified, I still feel awful for Sam. It must have been terribly difficult for him to have lost his mother and to have learned what he did about his father. I can't imagine having to live with all of that, but it was something that I could at least minimally relate with, having lost my dad to suicide years ago. There's one thought in particular that I've been wondering about most of all. Why hadn't I heard of this sooner? Even if I couldn't remember what had happened to me. Why? Why did my mother never tell me about it? She told me that Mr. O was my imaginary friend. Why did she fucking lie to me? How can she do that? I deserve to know the truth. I just don't understand. I need to take a break. This is becoming too much to handle for me. I just need some time to think. I've decided to keep in contact with Sam. Even if he serves as a reminder of that monster, I feel like as if we should stick together. For years, he's been affected by what his father has done. I think I should be there for him like I was when we were kids. After much internal deliberation, I decided to talk with my mother about, well, everything. She played dumb at first, feigning ignorance. It was only when I told her that I had met up with Sam that she quit her act. I sat her down. I wanted to believe that somehow, some way, she had a justified reason for having lied to me. So I asked her. I asked her why she lied to me about Mr. O. I asked her why she never once spoke about the situation that happened all those years ago. She started by apologizing for misleading me, but I quickly cut her off. I wasn't interested in her apologies. Rather, I was interested in the truth. I made her face me and look me directly into the eyes. She was no longer going to hide behind her lies and her apologies. With that, I sat and waited for her to deliver her response. According to her, Sam's father had been among the most unremarkable men she had ever met. She never formed a personal relationship with him. She only ever spoke to him because I had been best friends with his son. There was a night where the sound of sirens entered the neighborhood and several police cars pulled up near Sam's house. A few officers entered the home and soon exited with Mr. O under custody. He had been charged with the possession of child pornography, as well as the molestation of several minors. He was later convicted of both charges. Upon hearing the news, both she and my father struggled to grasp the possibility that this man had done something to me. Something wrong, something awful. It wasn't long after Mr. O's arrest that the authorities showed up on our doorstep. My parents had called them to voice their concerns regarding my involvement with Mr. O. My mother refused to divulge any specific information regarding what happened afterward with the police. She simply stated that they incorporated my case into the investigation but came up empty-handed. Though no evidence was found to suggest that man had victimized me, there was no evidence he hadn't either. The uncertainty weighed down on my father. He had grown restless and highly irritable as the days went on, and no matter what my mother did, he wouldn't calm down. His fear was understandable, and the lack of knowledge about whether his child was harmed eventually drove him over the edge. When my mom found his note, it was already too late. He had left this world. unable to bear his burden any longer. My mother confessed that she wanted to tell me the truth many times over the years, but couldn't bring herself to do so. While I grew up, I eventually came to forget Mr. O even existed at all. As she witnessed me repress my memory of the events that had transpired, she told herself that it was best if I completely forgotten what had happened. She told me she did it to protect me, to keep me safe from the same paranoia that ended up taking her husband away from her. Although I extended my arms and embraced her following our conversation, I knew I held conflicting thoughts and emotions. On one hand, I understood why she acted the way she did. I sympathized with her dilemma. I was under the impression that by understanding her, I would come to forgive her. Instead, I found that my feelings were far more complex than that. Understanding why she did it didn't make it hurt any less. Knowing what it is she went through while enlightening didn't take away the pain of realizing that someone I trusted kept me in the dark for so long. If I hadn't met with Sam, how long would it have taken for her to tell me? Would I have ever found out about what happened? The crime that occurred had victimized kids. Our legal identities wouldn't have been publicly disclosed. There would have been no way for me to know that I, or anyone else, had been involved in an investigation. Without inside information, I could have never hoped to independently figure this all out. Perhaps I'm being selfish. After all, I'm not the only one that's hurting. My mother must feel god-awful, and to that end, I truly feel sorry for her. I'm likely going to need time to fix my relationship with her. After all, it's not like I can just brush aside years of being lied to, no matter how much I sympathize with her. Later that day, I briefly took the DS out from the cardboard box. There was one last thing I wanted to try. Opening the game, I spawned into the world. I willfully ignored every instance of Mr. O in the game and made my way towards my house. When I reached the computer, I interacted with it and was brought to the character creation menu. There he was, his eyes and his perverted smiles as wide as always. I scrolled over to the deletion option, hoping to wipe him away from this world he inhabited. I'm not sure why, I just felt as if getting rid of him in the DS would help me feel more distant from my history with him. Needless to say, it didn't work. His character remained and a text box popped up from the bottom of the screen. "You shouldn't delete me, Jeremy. I'm your friend, Mr. O, and we need to stick together. I love you, Jeremy." It read. Of course, I couldn't delete his model from the game. He had programmed himself in as a permanent feature of the world. I attempted to create a new character. I wanted to see if I could introduce others into the world, so that it wouldn't just be him and I, alone. Once again, I was unable to do this, and another text box came into view. "Aren't I good enough for you, Jeremy? You should be grateful for what you have. I promise I love you." I guess in a way it's kind of fitting that I can't just get rid of him. Just as I can't delete him from my past and pretend he was never there, I can't simply get him out of this game world. I didn't want him to be there, constantly reminding me of his presence. A part of me wished that I had stayed ignorant of his existence. Maybe things would be better had I never explored the attic and retrieved the DS from inside the box, to begin with. Sure, I could just stuff the device back where it came from, but I couldn't forget everything all over again, could I? Then again, maybe I didn't have to forget. Despite what happened, I've carried on living my life. I made it all the way to college. Sure, I wasn't conscious then of what I am now. Yet, if what I experienced in the past hadn't stopped me from moving forward so far, maybe it doesn't have to. I still have my mother. No matter how shaky our relationship has gotten, I still love her, and I know she still loves me. That's got to be worth something, right? Before I put the DS back into the box and shoved it into the attic, I removed the game cartridge that contained Township Village. I stared at its blank surface. I remembered what Sam had told me about the secret room Mr. O created for me. If I played through the game in a way that appeased Mr. O, he would allow me entry into the locked room, just as he did when leading me into the basement. It was just another cruel way of warping me into his pathetic plaything. Maybe a few days ago I would have been desperate to figure out what was inside that room. However, Now that I was aware of the true nature of the game, a single thought came to mind. I didn't need it anymore. I destroyed the game and tossed its remains into the garbage can, where it belongs. There was no time to let that piece of junk cost me any more sleep. I opened my computer and scrolled through my email. I skimmed over the lame advertisements and spam. That's when I noticed the Google Hangouts tab. I saw that it contained a notification and I clicked on it. There, I found a message waiting for me. S. Hey Jeremy. J. Hi Sam. S. Are you doing okay? Yeah, I'm doing alright. How about yourself? I'm okay, man. Look, I really want to apologize for the way things are right now. It's really fucked up, I know. I wish we didn't have to meet again under these circumstances. It's okay, dude. Believe me. It's okay. It's not your fault. I'm glad I at least got to reconnect with you. Are you sure? You can be open with me. For real, dude. I'm dead serious here. Yeah, I know you are. Look, if I'm struggling with something, I'll let you know, alright? I got it. Thank you. I really appreciate it. You know I'm here for you. You'll do the same, won't you? Do the same? What do you mean? You'll talk to me if you're not feeling okay, right? Oh yeah, of course I will. Hey Sam, let's meet over coffee soon. I'm kinda bummed I didn't get anything to drink last time. What do you say? Dude, seriously? You're gonna make me drive all the way over there again? Nah man, I'll meet you halfway. Fine. It sounds like a plan. But you're covering the bill since I tried paying for your drinks the last time. Yeah dude, alright. Whatever you say. This blog will not receive further updates.
In this little shop of horrors, that's how we get down. Yeah, enter, the projects on the prairie, scary. Greet you at the gate with Bloody Marys. Blood, a grail full of blood. Back to the cemetery, get more blood. Standing on the grave, drinking blood, smoking bones. We seen a crew of ghouls running by with stolen tombstones. With Hell's Angels on the chase, they lost the bust a black skull. Want you embrace, they tie you up in chains and they stomp on your face. They go to purgatory and they beat the fucking case. I look around, mad bodies being buried in